Let me start with a brief overview of our family portrait. I am 45 years old, and my wife is 14 years younger than me. We are raising our 7-year-old son. I have never given up on my marriage. I first crossed paths with my future wife a decade ago on a dating site, and from there, we began dating, going out, and sharing intimate moments. She was quite adventurous when it came to intimacy. We'd often take spontaneous trips to nearby towns to be together, whether in a park or on the beach. Though I wasn't her first partner, she had a wealth of techniques that brought us both immense pleasure. That's how we ended up conceiving our child. After dating for 3 years, I must admit that I'm not wealthy. I don't hold an official job but work as a traveling salesman, which means my income can fluctuate greatly. There are days when I earn a lot, and other days when I earn nothing at all. Initially, I pushed for an abortion, but my girlfriend persuaded me that keeping the child was a better choice, arguing that if I hadn't struck it rich by my age, the idea of a comfortable life for our child was a mere fantasy. We had a modest wedding with the financial support of her parents, who are quite wealthy. I lived with my mother and 2 sisters in a small house, while my wife's family owned 2 apartments and a house near the city. They gave us a 2-room apartment, and we moved in. At first, we were over the moon when we had a baby, whom I named Lucas. After a year and a half, my wife decided to return to teaching at the university. During this time, I looked after Lucas, and whenever I had any business, I left him with my mom. Gradually, I noticed shifts in my wife's demeanor. Intimacy dwindled, and she seemed perpetually lost in thought. She asked me to install WhatsApp on her phone, and from that point, she seemed glued to it. It felt like the usual pattern when a woman has found someone else. I decided to confront her directly. She admitted she'd been talking to a new male colleague for 6 months, a teacher who started at her university while she was on maternity leave. She explained they spent considerable time together, that he was married with children too, and claimed they loved one another. However, she insisted that their affection remained mostly platonic, involving just kissing, touching, and oral sex on his part. I tried to accept that was all there was to it. When I asked if she wanted a divorce, she reassured me of her love for me and that she was happy with our life together, but she wouldn't end her affair. She promised to ensure her relationship wouldn't impact me or our child. She left it up to me to decide whether I could accept living under those circumstances. I cherished my wife deeply and had no desire to lose her. Although I was financially dependent on her, that wasn't my primary concern. So I made the decision that we wouldn't pursue a divorce. I resolved to be more attentive and to make her feel cherished enough to leave her lover behind, so she wouldn't need him anymore. I arranged candlelit dinners, brought her flowers, and served her coffee in bed each morning. This continued for about 6 months. Then, one evening after work, she came home in tears, completely hysterical. I wrapped my arms around her, trying to comfort her, and asked what was wrong, but she wouldn't share. I assured her I wouldn't push. She could tell me whenever she felt ready. I spent the night soothing her. The next morning, she revealed that the previous day, her lover's wife had discovered their intimate messages on WhatsApp and created a huge scene. As a result, her lover had ended things with her. She sobbed and confided that she couldn't imagine life without him. I made an effort to understand and support her during this tough time. The following day, my wife expressed her gratitude for my support, declaring that I was the best husband. I managed to show her my love and dedication, and I believed that no one would intrude upon our family again. For the next month, however, she spent her time online, searching for him and keeping tabs on his life, while I waited for this phase to pass. When I asked her if there would come a time when no other man would be part of our lives, she replied that she needed to feel desired by others. She flirted with men online but assured me that it wouldn't lead to anything in real life. I was deceived. About a year later, a young man in his mid-20s entered her life. I discovered this on the day I returned home from my mother's. I had been staying with my mother for a couple of weeks, and by the 5th day, I felt a growing unease. My wife hadn't called or messaged me on WhatsApp. Deciding to investigate, I made an unexpected visit home around 1 in the morning. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. A wave of anger and hatred surged through me, and for the first time in my life, I found myself banging on the door, ringing the bell, and shouting. Eventually, she opened up. To my shock, her lover was there. They had decided to live together for the 2 weeks my son and I were at my mother's, hoping to see if they could manage a shared life. He was attempting to convince her to leave me and start anew with him. I threw him out and tried to calmly talk to my wife. During our discussion, he lost control and struck her for the first time. In tears, she revealed everything: how they had been together for a year, that they loved each other, and that she wanted children with him. Devastated, I stepped outside and spent the night drinking. When I returned home in the morning, I began packing my things, but my wife pleaded with me to stay. She claimed she had regained her senses and promised to leave her lover. She kept her word. In September, we celebrated her birthday with my friend and 3 of her girlfriends. At our home, they were lively, laughing, drinking, and genuinely enjoying life together. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I went to see who it was, and there stood her second lover with a bouquet of roses. He asked me to call for my wife. I shouted her name but remained by the door, next to him. He congratulated her on her birthday and urged her to join him. His wife had asked him to leave us alone. After a few minutes of his emotional pleas, I could no longer tolerate it and shoved him away to close the door. In response, he lunged at me, fists flying, and we started fighting. My friend, an athlete, rushed in to separate us and then turned on her lover, landing blows of his own. I had to pull my friend away from the fray, and we managed to shut the door. It seemed the lover had left, leaving the bouquet behind. The celebration was ruined. I told my friend that my wife was being harassed by some unstable person who wouldn't leave her alone, and he appeared to buy my story. The next 2 years felt like a fairy tale. There was no infidelity, just complete mutual respect, love, and honesty between us. Our son, Lucas, started first grade, but recently I noticed my wife had once again started tidying up her social media. She resumed clutching her phone, holding late-night laptop sessions, and browsing anonymous tabs. When I asked to see her contact page, she refused, citing her right to privacy. I'm at a loss about what to do. How can I prevent the return of those dreadful times when I confronted her unfaithfulness? If you enjoyed my story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. To stay updated on new and interesting stories, hit the bell.